Well, this is the final full week, with the Week 18 games only being scheduled a week in advance. I likely won't have enough time to do these full, long-form videos for those games. Instead, I'll likely just do shorter, unscripted videos, kind of like what I did for the Ravens versus Patriots game that got flexed into Week 16. Enough hypotheticals though, let's snap back to reality with Detroit's representative this week, the M&M. Now yes, as you can see in the top left, this drink is spelled like the candy and not like the wrapper, but if M&M can rhyme orange with 4-inch door hinge, then I'm pretty sure I can use this drink for the 313.
I put my orange 4-inch door hinge in storage.
I actually first learned about this drink from Grant O'Brien on Dropout TV's Dirty Laundry, and it is a dead simple stirred drink consisting of equal parts Mezcal and Amaro Montenegro. This drink is a favorite among industry professionals, dishwashers, servers, bartenders, etc. So much so that it's actually acquired the nickname Manager's Meeting. Now I think the popularity of this drink really comes down to 3 main factors. 1, it's dead simple to make, just mix 2 spirits, no shaking needed. Hell, even ice is optional, you can just serve this drink as a shot if you want to. 2, despite being super simple, this drink actually has a lot of complexity in its flavor profile. Both Mezcal and that Amaro Montenegro are quite complex individually, and then when they come together, it creates quite a magical combo. And 3, this drink is strong as fuck, alright? It's just 2 different alcohols, straight booze, no filler. So yeah, not only does it carry the name of Detroit's most famous rapper, but it's got a real blue-collar pedigree to it, befitting a drink for the Lions. Now Minnesota's representative is of course another purple drink, and this time it's the most logical one of them all, it's the Purple Viking. Now the origin of the Purple Viking confuses me a little bit. Obviously this is one of those drinks where you have a bunch of different recipes that all share the same name, kind of like the Packers Punch that we saw earlier, but my specific recipe comes courtesy of Colleen Graham from the Spruce Eats. The part that confuses me is that it seems like she came up with this recipe. Her article is most likely the first one that'll come up if you search for this drink, but she writes about it like it's somebody else's creation. However, she never attributes the drink to anybody else, so I just don't know what to make of that. Origin aside, the cocktail is quite a strange highball, consisting of Southern Comfort, Blue Curacao, blueberry liqueur, Sloe Gin, lime juice, sour mix, and lemon lime soda. Okay, so much to break down here. First, the specific Southern Comfort call-out makes me think that this might have been a corporate creation, but there are a number of other cocktails that call for that monstrosity. Second, blueberry liqueur is a wild pull. This is quite literally the first drink in this entire series that I've seen call for it. Third, I thought that Sloe Gin was a weird ad, but apparently Southern Comfort and Sloe Gin is a pretty established combo, popping up in drinks like the Alabama Slammer. Third, listing both lime juice and sour mix, both of which are listed as just a splash? Have some damn respect. Either list out the lime juice, lemon juice, and sugar, or be honest with yourself and just limit it to sour mix, which is lime juice, lemon juice, and sugar. Alright, so I certainly wasn't going to turn this into a highball like the Purple Viking, but this did give me a lot of really fun ingredients to play with. Ultimately, after thinking about it for a little bit, I had a brain blast moment and decided to do this as basically the craziest riff on a last word. So as a result, this is going to be an equal parts cocktail consisting of 3/4 of an ounce of Mezcal. Brand new bottle of Mezcal here, which I don't like quite as much as my last Mezcal. I can get into why exactly later, but this one's basically a bit fruitier and a bit less smoky, and I really like my Mezcals on the smoky side. 3/4 of an ounce of our Sloe Gin. Love getting to use this in cocktails. This is such a fun little, want to call it a spirit, but technically I should call it a liqueur. Sloe Gin, I've talked about it more in detail in other episodes. 3/4 of an ounce of our Blue Curacao. So this is probably the part that worries me the most because this is a lot of Blue Curacao in this drink. But I just, the equal parts spec was calling to me like the goddamn Green Goblin mask. So I figured, why not? Let's give it a shot. Let's see how it turns out. And then finally, 3/4 of an ounce of our lime juice. I'll be very interested to see how the color on this one turns out. Ideally we get something close to purple, but I would not be surprised if we get some sort of like nasty brownish green, just because we've got sort of, yellow, blue, and red in here. I think that Sloe Gin, might fuck with the color a little bit, or the lime juice will fuck with the color. Anyways, we're gonna shake that up. There we go. Then we're gonna strain that into a little Nick and Nora glass, as this is basically a last word riff. Oh boy, another teal drink, wonderful. Such is the life of making drinks with blue Curacao. All right, and now because M&M can rhyme basically anything, I have decided to call this drink Rhymes with Purple. Let's give it a try. Woo! Okay. Interesting. It's certainly Mezcal forward. Ooh. Okay, this is a good drink. Hold on, but there's a lot to break down here. The Mezcal is definitely the main note. It's definitely like that sort of smoky agave. Because this is a fruitier Mezcal, right? It's not quite as peaty as the last one that I had. Or I guess not technically peaty because Mezcal is smoked differently, but you get what I'm saying. It's not quite as much as that like campfire kind of flavor. It's a bit more that sort of like agave notes. You get a lot more of that coming through. And so this one, it blends, I think it plays nicer with the other sort of fruity ingredients that we have in this drink. But I wonder, I might have wanted one that was smokier to create more of a contrapoint. Let me see, let me have another sip of this. I mean, it's a beautifully balanced drink. It is like perfect level of sweetness and acid in that drink. That last word spec is a real kind of bulletproof one. Obviously, there's some pretty significant differences here from a last word. It feels almost kind of disingenuous to be saying last word spec because of how different this is. I think the lime juice is basically our only sort of like common ingredient and like ingredient that's filling a similar role. But this equal parts, like it balances really well. You get a lot of that like really nice sweetness undercut well with the acidity. I think this is really a drink where the four ingredients very much blend together to create a new cohesive unit. This is not one of those drinks where it's sort of like, oh, here's the Mezcal and here's the Sloe Gin, here's the lime juice. No, it really does come together into a sort of new final product that tastes like its own creation. You can't sort of divide out the parts of it. You can pick out notes and be like, oh, this flavor note, right? Like this is sort of a little bit of smokiness that's coming from this Mezcal. Again, it's not super smoky. I really do wish that I had gone with a smokier one. I actually picked out this specific bottle because it says on it, natural smoky flavor. And I was like, cool. If you're putting smoky flavor on the front of your Mezcal, I assume there's gonna be a lot of punch of smoke in it. No. This is a Mezcal that honestly, I probably would have really liked if it had been a tequila. Obviously, I know why it's a Mezcal and not a tequila, but in terms of the role it plays in the bar, this slots much more into that sort of tequila role than the Mezcal role. But anyways, it is still quite good in this drink, and it creates, I think it's part of why this drink comes together as a cohesive unit instead of feeling a bit more disjoint. I think a smokier Mezcal would create an overall more interesting drink because it would really add some extra sort of kick and punch to it. But I think it would sort of start to strain those bonds between the liquids in this drink and kind of start to pull it apart in a weird way. Perhaps the best part about this drink, though, is that there's none of those sort of weird off notes from the blue Curacao. It really you do get a little bit of that sort of like orange citrus flavor coming through, but I can't tell if this is a case of like something is actively tamping down those harsh notes or if we just don't have anything in this drink that's pulling them out. It's kind of hard to tell, like is the sweetness and the sort of fruitiness of the Sloe Gin, is that like covering up those harsh notes? Or is it just that we don't have something kind of astringent like pineapple juice to pull out and emphasize those harsh notes? I can't really tell which of those, but regardless, it is very good. And it's just a very kind of like well-rounded drink. I think that's probably the best way I can describe this, is just like very put together, very well-rounded, probably not gonna crack like, the top 5 or top 3 cocktails, but maybe top 10. This is definitely like a B plus A minus kind of drink. It's like very, yeah, incredibly approachable. It's got enough character with, you know, the bit of smoke that this Mezcal does have, you know, that push, like the sweetness plus the lime juice, perfectly imbalanced, you know. It's a very approachable drink with enough detail and sort of, you know, interesting notes to it to reward the drinking experience. I, you know, certainly would be willing to make this again. You know, if someone served this to me at a bar, I would be like, oh, it's a cool little cocktail. It's a fun little thing you've done there. I enjoyed that. But it's not something where I would, you know, be spending the rest of the night being like, oh man, that cocktail was so incredible, you know? It's very much that kind of like, you did a good job, you know, here's your thumbs up, here's your gold star, but that's kind of it, you know? You're not changing the world with this drink. It is a very pretty color though. It's honestly like, it's less of that kind of like toothpaste teal that we've gotten on a lot of previous blue Curacao drinks. And it's much more of a sort of like ocean water. I think that's probably the best way I can describe it is, you know, when you've got like a nice calm day in some really deep water and it's sort of got that like really deep blue, but with just a bit of greenish tint to it. That's very much the kind of hue that this drink gives off. And it doesn't really fit in with the teams playing. You know, obviously it would have been nicer if this drink had come out more purple, but it is a very pretty color to look at. I think it'll photograph quite well. All right, well, we're starting off week 17 strong, and we'll see who wins this NFC North matchup in the simulation. The Lions start with the ball, and both defenses start hot as these teams trade punts on their opening drives. Detroit's second drive ends better, with Jahmyr Gibbs powering them to the 2, where a short touchdown pass to tight end Anthony Firkser puts them on the board. The Lions defense forces another punt, and then the offense starts off the second quarter with another short touchdown pass to Firkser, this one from 5 yards out. Another Vikings punt, another Lions red zone drive. Demo tries to punch it in, but Vikings burst through the line like it's the 1100s. As a result, they bring out Bates for a chip shot to put the Lions up 3 scores with about 45 seconds left. The Vikings can't put up any points, so they go into halftime down 17-0. Minnesota opens the third quarter with yet another punt, and of course, Detroit responds with another red zone drive. This one stalls out at the 18-yard line as the jump ball to Jamo in the end zone is broken up. But 35 yards is light work for Bates, who sends it down Broadway to tack on another 3 points. As the third quarter comes to a close, the Vikings finally have a drive not end in a punt. However, it's not a touchdown or a field goal, but a DJ Reed pick on an overthrown ball, though 9 does manage to rally and tackle Reed at the 30. With that excellent field position, the Lions open the fourth quarter with their first rushing touchdown of the game, as Gibbs easily strolls on in for the score. Down 4 scores in the fourth quarter, the Vikings have to go for it on 4th and 7, but the pass for Addison is broken up by Anzalone, and it's Lions ball once more. 3rd and goal from the 2-yard line is a great time to finally get St. Brown involved in the game, as Goff hits him on the out route for the final score of the game. That's right, the Vikings actually did make it within range for a 55-yarder with a minute and a half left in the game, but Will Reichard missed it wide left, leaving Minnesota shut out at home. And a few plays later, the Lions take the final knee, mercifully ending this 34-0 thrashing of the Vikings. Well, this outcome would be a fantastic Christmas present, but sadly, I don't think it's in my future. Now, I do definitely think that my Lions have the edge in this matchup, but a 34-point victory and a shutout just feels completely unreasonable, especially considering we found a way to lose our first game against Minnesota. I suppose with how crazy this season has been, anything could happen, but this is the opposite kind of crazy that we've been seeing this year. A huge factor in how this game goes is how both of these QBs play, with this game providing examples of the two extremes. On the positive end, Jared Goff played incredibly efficiently, completing 85% of his passes for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not an insane performance, but certainly the kind that tends to produce wins. Meanwhile, JJ McCarthy reverted into peak 9, completing less than half of his passes for only 120 yards and 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. To really drive it home, Jared Goff had 3 times the passer rating of JJ. A lot of the Lions' success, both in this simulation and in real life, can be attributed to this man, Jahmyr Gibbs. The Lions are 8-0, undefeated this season when Jahmyr Gibbs scores a touchdown, and 0-6 when he doesn't score. That's a real fucking stat, and it speaks to how critical he is to this offensive engine. They certainly got him firing on all cylinders in this game, putting up 130 yards and a touchdown on 25 carries, which would actually be his highest workload this season. The Vikings never even really got a chance to get their run game started, as Aaron Jones had more carries than he did yards in this matchup. Now the shutout was crazy, but this right here is how you know we're in some fucked up alternate dimension. The Lions have been desperately digging for tight ends with Sam Laporta out for the year, but Firkser has still only had 2 catches for 11 total yards in his 4 games. There's no way he's getting 8 catches in a single game, and even less chance that he sees 2 touchdowns. That aside, Jamison Williams leading the team in receiving yards is at least a little bit of normalcy to help balance everything out. This game was just all kinds of weird, as Tesla had more catches than Amon-Ra, and Jordan Addison only had a single catch. Obviously, a lot of that can be attributed to JJ's horrible quarterback play, but even so, Addison has only had a single game this year with fewer receptions. He's actually been a consistent target for McCarthy, unlike Justin Jefferson, who he seems to be having chemistry issues with. With the bar set so low, it's no surprise that JJ has a better performance in the Monte Carlo simulation, seeing a nearly 60-yard boost to his passing yards. The Lions still have a very healthy 120 rushing yards, but those are split between Gibbs and Monty. Also, the Vikings are actually allowed to have a run game, as Jones and Mason both have over 40 yards on the ground. Through the air, both of the star wide receivers see a big boost, as Justin Jefferson gets a 20-yard boost, and Amon-Ra sees his receiving yards increase by 40. Finally, the score distribution definitely agrees that there's a non-zero chance Minnesota gets shut out, though the most common outcome is a 21-14 Lions victory. With both of those observations, you might think that this is an overall low-scoring game, but the average is actually slightly above the mode. It's a 23-16 Detroit victory. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the surprisingly complex and balanced Rhymes with Purple. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.